subscribe and share. Please, turn off the ad block, subscribe, and share. Links will be below for anyone wanting to support this channel.
Hello everybody, my name is Craig Bennett and I'm the founder and owner of TechViews Help, and today I am going to talk about a very interesting and in-depth topic that's quite important. Who owns your information and what can things do with your information? Now, we're going to be using fact-based out through this. I'm using term services, things of that nature, in real case studies. Real lawsuits that went against governments and several other things due to what can they do with your information with that. So, because we're going to be talking about legal stuff, I want to mention a few things. First off, I'm not a lawyer. I don't plan to be a lawyer. So if you really want to know a lot more about this, and if you felt like your information was violated, talk to an actual lawyer. I can't help you there. Talk to an actual lawyer in that field. And next is we're going to be focusing on United States. And there's two reasons. One is I'm in the United States. The second is most places they follow through with United States. So say, for example, if the United States makes certain laws, you'll see other countries immediately take them or eventually take them, good or bad, and that's very, very important. So, and the last thing is keep in mind, even though company terms and services might say one thing, the real law could be something else, even if it goes against terms and services. And terms and services are not law. So, yeah. So, as far as this goes, let's jump on into this. We're going to be using Facebook, Google, and Apple as an example. And let's start with Facebook. Facebook is like many other services like Dropbox, Twitter, and many others with their terms and services. And what you'll find is they'll flat out say that you own the information, yada yada yada. You share it, then it goes to everybody. So with this, and by the way, one thing I want to mention that I forgot is when you're reading these terms and services, when you're dealing with this legal stuff, remember that it's a different language. Even though it might be written in your language, whereas this is obviously written in English, and that's my language, but it's really a different language. An example that I gave in a few videos back, quite a few videos back, but still holds true to today. In the United States, if a cop pulls you over and they ask to search your vehicle, then your response should be either yes or no. That's up to you. Should really be no, but it should never include the word vehicle. You should only use car or truck in your vocabulary. The reason why is whereas you and I would say vehicle and know that, oh, it's a car, it's something that moves with an engine and a couple wheels, yada yada yada. Well, legally, the word vehicle means a work operational vehicle, and that means that you have to have a permit in order to even use it. And chances are you don't have that permit, and they will just flat out write you a ticket for driving a work vehicle because you said vehicle. And if you said car or truck, then they can't give you that. Because you didn't fall in that trap. You'll find that time and time again. And that's just one example. A lot of cops won't use that. So a lot of cops actually don't even know about that. But there is some that do, that try to cook their own books to make their numbers look good. And that's just a really good example I can think of. There's other examples that I can also think of. But anyways, going into this. So basically what Facebook's stuff says is and you'll find this across the board, you own the content. And this is with all companies. Government's a little bit different. We'll get into that in a bit. So with companies, you'll find it where you own the data. The reason for this is, let's say, for example, you throw a bunch of child pornography on the internet, Facebook, Google Drive, wherever. Well, if they say, the company says they own the data, then what will end up happening is, if you did that, then they will get in trouble and go to jail along with you. But if they say you own the data, then you will be the only one who goes to jail. So that's very, very important. But with this, they can play with the data, because they say, and with Facebook's, if you share the data, and this is a very important one that I want to point out, is this little thing right here. Your content has been shared with others. If it has, then they can play with it. And that's very important, because your content has been shared with others. Many people you'll say that to, and they'll say publicly that you shared it with everybody, or shared it with your friends. They wouldn't really consider family. They wouldn't consider one other person. But it didn't say publicly. It didn't say whatever. It said shared with others. One other person is others. So by just sharing something with one other account, they can play with your stuff all day long. Now, the rest of this gets into what happens if you don't share it, what happens to the information, some other stuff. And feel free to take a look at this and play devil advocate real quick. Why would they do that? Well, to also protect them in case if there's a leak. That's really the only thing I can think of as far as devil advocate. But the reality is Facebook is free. They are a company. They got to make money, and we all know how they make money. So with that in mind, let's just move on to Google. All right, and so with Google's, the thing with this is they'll flat out tell you, we take all information. Right here, we collect all information. Then it gets even more detailed. So anyways, I like this. By the way, just want to mark some high points here. One thing you'll find in a lot of these contracts, terms of services, and other things is a lot of this boring old crap that, again, has loopholes into it, has legal terminology and all the other crap with it. And with this, actually gives you some explanations. Now, they are very transparent because it's known what they've done, what they do with the information. So that's one thing to keep in mind. But and I'm pretty sure if that wasn't the case, they wouldn't be as transparent. But this makes it a lot easier for someone to look at and say, oh, I know what that means now. Because, I mean, even things like credit cards, you got to explain some of that stuff, because legally, what does that mean? So, as far as things goes, they collect everything. And they get into how they can use it. But it doesn't matter what service it is. for the most part, they can't share your Gmail. They can look at your messages only in portions. They cannot look at a full thing, and for the most part, without going into terms of services, you cannot look at someone's personal stuff, messages and things of that nature. And that's very, very important because they can look at portions of the email. So something like come from Amazon, your deliveries coming in, whatever. They can see, it's from Amazon, and it says something about delivery. Let's highlight that and put some notification on a person's phone. They do that, but they can't look at the messages all through and through and actually share it with advertisement companies and everything else. They can say, well, this person gets a bunch of emails from Amazon, but they can't say the content of the messages. So that's pretty important. Now, as far as Apple, let's see if I can fix this. Sorry about that. So as far as Apple goes, Apple, they collect all information. So real quick, if you read this first part, it says, we collect all information that does not associate with any specific individual. It's paraphrasing. And that is a very interesting thing because, again, we're talking about legal terminology. What is a specific individual? Specific individual to mean you might say you, obviously, but a specific individual, how do you separate data from a specific individual? Well, just remove portions, if not complete things. This thing has the person's contact information, which includes their birthday. Let's just remove the last number of their birthday. So now we're saying that this is not associated with the given individual, and there's no way of knowing who this Joe Blow is. When anyone with 2 cents can look at it and say, oh, it's missing the last number, and this is the last number. So yeah. And as far as this other part, it says it pretty much does anything with it. So basically with Apple, they collect any information and they are able to do anything with it. Now with that in mind, there is limitations even with them. And the one thing to keep in mind is, what are those limitations? Unfortunately, their stuff is so vague that it seems like they can do quite a bit. Obviously, with the exception to the messages and emails and things of that nature. But for the most part, it looks like they could do quite a bit. And if you took note on what they done with China, apparently they have been selling information to China, and they recently got caught in the process of doing that. And they openly admitted to selling it to China because it was legal for them to. Chinese information to China basically sold their own people's information to the government over there. And that's pretty important. Now, with that in mind, there might be some legitimate reasoning behind all these things, but still, that's the thing to keep in mind. So let's jump into the government. And again, we're going to focus on the United States government. So with the United States government, who owns your information? What can they do with your information, and so on and so on. Let's start with the basics. Who owns your driver's license? The government. Who owns your birth certificate? The government. Who owns your Social Security? The government. Who owns your visa? The government. Who owns things of that nature? The government. Who owns the bills that come in through the post office, which the post office is owned by the government? You. So, starting to notice a pattern, but there is a few things that you own. who owns where your mail is coming in. I don't think that's being tracked. But who owns that? The government. Who owns the actual mail in circulation? You. Now let's get into a interesting one. If you get arrested, found guilty or not, and the department actually uses your information without your knowledge, with or without your knowledge, without your permission, who owns that information and what is the liability? Well, you own the information and they can be sued for that, which has been done. So there was a girl, I think it was 2010, she sued the DEA because the DEA arrested her a while back and took her phone for a few seconds, downloaded all the information, gave it back to her. Turns out, I think she was innocent. I'm not really sure. But long story short, the DEA ended up using the pictures for what's known as catfishing. And basically, they were trying to lure people in for drug deals, pornography, some other things of that nature. Mostly drug deals because it's DEA. And with that, the girl found out about it and sued them. In a settlement, the Justice Department gave her, I think, $130 some odd $1,000. So a pretty decent amount. And the reason for that is the DEA didn't own the information. They were actually trying to even act like they own it at first, and then they start backpedaling. But they don't own the information. The FBI, DEA, CIA, someone does that. The only information they own is the information they collect from after your arrest. So say, for example, your mugshots, who owns it? It's the government. But who owns your selfies and all the other pictures? You do. So it's very, very important. Now, with that in mind, let's go into the other. Let's say the FBI or whatever wants to get your information. How can they get it? It's through a warrant. How's that process done? Basically, a warrant has to be made, the paperwork. A judge has to read it, understand it, and usually there's a little bit of a, hey, this is what it's for. Sometimes it's a fight, sometimes it's not, most of the time not. The judge signs it, and there you go. Now, if the judge don't sign it, then legally the department can't do anything with that. So that's very, very important notes. So without that, the only other way is voluntary getting the information. One thing I forgot to mention is who owns your bank information? The government. This is a law that was passed a long while back, and this allows the IRS to, if you refuse or don't pay your taxes, and they find out about it, they can garnish your pay, and actually they can take money from your bank account. And the government is one of the entities that, while they don't directly own your bank account, they own it in a way where they can actually freeze it, obviously with a warrant. But that's just one thing out there. So with that in mind, because here's the thing that a lot of people don't realize, is the government owns a lot of this information not because they just want to own it. A lot of this information is owned for an actual reason. So why is the bank information owned? Well, for taxes. They do require some paperwork and stuff. It's not as intensive as all these other things. And in some cases, they will require a warrant. but for the most part, they own, quote unquote, own it because they can pull money out of it. Now, as far as the birth certificate, that's for obvious reasons. Social Security, that's for obvious reasons. Visa, that's again for obvious reasons. So a lot of these things, they are owned by the government for obvious reasons. So it's not a bad thing that they own these type of informations. So not to play devil's advocate, but a lot of this is common sense that for mugshots, why wouldn't you want the government to own the mugshots? It makes it a lot easier for them to find criminals to do their job, and it costs a lot less to do it. So therefore, it makes 100% sense for them to own it. Now, obviously, when they misabuse the power, that's another thing entirely. But again, depending on things, that could actually go against the law or policies. But as far as that goes, let's go into how your information can be collected legally other than voluntary and warrant. So one of the things that the NSA has the ability to do, and it's known, is if your information goes out to a foreign body and back, then your information can be collected. So this being said, if you're using a VPN, the VPN says you're somewhere outside the United States, or let's say that you're using a server that's outside the United States, whether you know it or not. And say, for example, you want to email your next door neighbor. Well, that email, it can be collected because it looks like it come from outside the United States. This is being changed though, because right now there's people working on it, and there's been hearings on this most recently in the past month or two, where the NSA has to start reforming their stuff to where they only collect information unless there's they only collect information if there's a credible threat with the information. Otherwise, they won't be able to. Right now, they're still able to get away with it, but it looks like it's going more and more and more towards that. So if you're outside the United States, it's looking a little bit more favorable to you in the long run. So that's one thing to keep in mind, and that is one way that they can collect information. But what can they actually do with it? It's not that much at all. In fact, they can go to you, make you feel like crap, but beyond that, they really can't do much with it. I've seen it where if authority figure knows something about you, they think you're ashamed of it, they will try to use it against you. But for the most part, that's about it. Anyways, I'm pretty sure that not many of you, if any of you, stuck around this long, and this video's gone long enough. So I'm just going to end here. And if you do have any questions, feel free to leave them down there in the comment section. I'll try to answer as quickly as possible. But if you want to add anything, go ahead. Now, if you like this video, please leave a like, subscribe, share. If you don't like it, then leave a dislike, but tell me why so I can fix it in future videos. Again, this has been Craig Bent, founder of Honor Tech Reviews. Nope. Hope you have a great day.